Welcome to the Juggling Mind and Money podcast with Steve Rowe and Jessica Schlupp-Taylor. Steve Rowe is the founder of Lucent Financial Planning and an award-winning independent financial planner. He helps you to use your money and have a great life. Jess Schlupp-Taylor is a psychologist supporting people through change, challenges, and forks in the road of life. Together, they will help unblock the sludge in your mind, stopping you from achieving financial and psychological happiness.
Hello and welcome to episode 35 of Juggling Mind and Money. I'm Steve, founder of Lucent Financial Planning and Chartered Financial Planner. And in this podcast, we're trying to focus on trying to be happy. And money is an important part of that. And hopefully I've got that bit wrapped up. But today we have a very special guest, Vicky Reynal, who is the money psychotherapist and writes for the Sunday Times. So be sure to read her column, everybody. So welcome, Vicky. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent, thanks. I'm really excited about seeing you and speaking with you today. So I'm going to come straight in, because this is my style, with a hard-hitting question.
Okay.
So what exactly is a money psychotherapist?
So I work like any other psychotherapist, focusing on emotions, on past experiences, but with a focus on money, people's relationship with money. So the people that come to see me are people who feel stuck in that relationships. Maybe they have financial patterns that they don't feel they can break out of. Maybe they're in constant conflict with family, partners, friends about money that they don't seem to move on from or understand. So I help them get to the bottom of what emotions are sitting behind the difficult relationship with money, so that they can then find different strategies to cope, and they can move on and change their relationship with money.
Okay, and how long does that take typically? How long do they need to work with you? Is it a long period?
It really varies. Some people come for a few sessions and they feel they've understood enough to go on and make changes. Other people stay for years. And I have, even clients that stay over 5 years, because money was the tip of the iceberg. It was just one area of life in which a particular struggle was manifesting. Maybe they were very controlling in many areas of life and with money, but they came for the money. And once we unpick that, it turns out it's something broader that they need to deal with. So it really varies from person to person.
That's like all things in life, isn't it? People come for the money, but actually, like work, find they like something else about it and perhaps find it hard to give up. So how did you get into that then, Vicky? I assume you did psychotherapy first, or was it money first?
Well, actually, money was sandwiched in between the psychotherapy. So I started with a psychology degree and I ended with a psychotherapy postgraduate. And in the middle, I did an MBA, a master's in business. And I was quite surprised that even though in the MBA we study behavioral finance, the psychology of investing, that's one of the mandatory classes you take, in the psychotherapy training, even though therapists have the right tools to help people think about their relationship with anything, help people think about the meaning of the choices they make in their lives, money wasn't really focused on very much at all, which is strange because we all have a relationship with money and we all have an almost daily relationship with money. So why aren't we helping those people who are really stuck in that relationship understand it from a psychotherapeutic lens? And of course, some therapists do that, but there isn't really a focus on it, which I think has helped people ever since I started writing the book and promoting myself as a financial psychotherapist. The amount of people that wrote to me and said, I didn't know I could talk about this in therapy. Yes, it is an emotional struggle more than a numerical one, more than a rational one. So it was... it's been quite liberating. And of course, there was kind of that intellectual interest. There's also the personal interest. I talked about money in my personal therapy because my family had its own difficult financial journey, and I needed to unpack it and understand it. And I wanted to give people the experience that I had in therapy of analyzing it, understanding it, trying to do it differently, find out what my values were, how those differed from my family. And that really was beneficial. So I wanted to do that for other people.
That's great. So everyone has their own money story, don't they? And as a financial planner, we have people come to see us, and if you raise this too early, they think you know what you want about, because money's just something they use. But money is made up, isn't it? We've made it up as humans. You don't see monkeys and giraffes going around looking at investing, for example. So we find it does, it is the root of everyone's decisions a lot of the time. So I'd like to ask you how, if we recognise that how someone might be affected by their thoughts on money, how would be the best way to raise, say, let's go and see Vicky?
Well, I think in a way what you're asking is, how do you know if you have a difficult relationship with money versus a healthy one? And people tend to be quite aware when something isn't quite right. It might come up emotionally. So, for example, they feel guilty when they spend, or they feel anxious and stay up at night worrying about money, even if they know at a rational level that they have enough, they don't need to be worried. So it could, emotions sometimes are the clue. Other times it's the numbers that speak for themselves. So, if you're constantly in debt, then you know that maybe you're living beyond your means. And what's that about? Is it a difficulty with overspending? You're impulsive, or maybe you're spending for the wrong reasons. Maybe you're in denial about something. So sometimes the numbers speak for themselves. And other times it's feedback from others. If you're consistently at the end of jokes about, being too stingy or too tight, and, you've had that feedback from several people in your life, then it might beg the question, what is this difference? Why are you being so careful with money? Is there something more than this is a conscious choice for you? That's what you value and the way you want to be. So I think there's different ways to tell. Most people, when they come to me, they know there's something they want to change about their relationship with money.
Some of those things can become a badge of honour, though, can't they?
Absolutely.
Like being stingy or tight, just yesterday I had someone mention it to me. They said, Steve, I have to ask this because this is how I am. It was about a fee. So it can become a positive thing in their mind, but it might be holding them back.
Well,
sometimes
I think we have to be curious about, and in general, I think it's worth being curious about the downside of our attitude to money. This is all about trade-offs. There's no right way to do money. And so, if we spend a lot of it, that's something that is generally frowned upon, they're a spendthrift and so on. But maybe they're enjoying their money more than we are. So every kind of attitude to money has its pros and cons. So even the person who is very careful with money and prides themselves on that can wonder, what's the downside of this? Am I really enjoying all the money I worked so hard to accumulate the way I want to?
So Vicky, you've mentioned your book, which is called Money on Your Mind, The Psychology Behind Your Financial Habits, which I've got to admit has become a little go-to Bible for me.
I'm glad to
if
hear
I think,
that.
there's a problem, I'm glad Vicky's wrote a chapter on that. That maybe I can help people with. So I thought what we could do is go through a few of the chapters. For anyone who's interested, they could go and buy the whole thing. But go through a few chapters of the things that I find as a financial planner coming up most often with our clients. Is that okay?
Yes, definitely.
So in your book, you write about past experiences with money and about how early memories form our financial kind of blueprints. So what kinds of childhood experiences tend to show up in adults' money behaviours later in life?
Well, there's the obvious ones, which are the money lessons that we were taught or maybe that we picked up in our family. So, for example, if we were told that, all debt is bad, then that will influence our attitude to debt when we grow up. Or if we were told that investing is reckless or investing is for rich people, that is something.
Or a gamble.
Or a gamble, exactly. That's a common one. That will stay in our minds and it might impact how we view investments later in life. But there's also money experiences that aren't money related that will impact what we do with money as adults. And that's what I focus a lot on in my book. So, for example, when we're young, what gets shaped is our personality, our sense of deservedness, our sense of agency. All of these things will have an impact on how we deal with money later in life. So, for example, I've met people who can't spend their money because they don't feel deserving of the good things that money can buy. So allowing themselves to go, I don't know, for a massage or go buy a nice handbag might feel too guilt-inducing. They don't feel they deserve it. And that sense of deservedness is established in our relationships with our parents early on, even as infants, how much we're played with or paid attention to, what we get back from our parents as they look at us. All of those things shape our personality and our sense of deservedness. Our sense of agency is important too. When we reached out for something as a little boy or a little girl, what did we get in return? Did we get more yeses or more nos? Where we shooed away when we entered a room and told to keep quiet and not disturb, or where we greeted and listened to? And that will impact our ability to confidently walk into our boss's office and ask for a raise when we're an adult. It will impact our ability to pitch an idea to a client and get that bonus we wanted. All of these experiences growing up will shape who we are as adults, and that will impact our relationship with money. So that's just, to give you a flavor of some of the experiences.
I think I would find a massage to be like a punishment.
For the spending or for the pain?
I don't understand why anyone would ever want one. But there you go.
I beg to disagree.
Yes, that's important, isn't it? So I found when I started my business 16 odd years ago, so in my family, my dad's always on about negotiating, get some money off. And I spent so much time negotiating, I didn't earn any because of my time was taken up doing that. So that took me a while to head off.
I think that brings up a good point, which is, what we do with those lessons and how do we know which ones are harmful and which ones aren't? Because when they become too rigid in our minds, they're kind of, I always have to negotiate, then that will keep you stuck. That will play against you, rather than maybe a looser idea of, it's good to negotiate. Don't always accept the first price. And that's something more flexible. It gives you a choice of, maybe next time if something feels expensive, maybe I can ask for a lower fee, rather than becoming kind of a rigid rule that keeps you stuck.
Yeah. So I found I've managed to change that over the years, but I do still think about it every time, and I stop myself now. Okay, so how can someone, Vicky, perhaps tell the difference between a past money narrative that's, it's okay, it's not causing any harm, and one that's actively sabotaging their financial well-being?
So I think that one that we just spoke about is important. Is it limiting your choices? Is it feeling very rigid? Or is it opening up your choices? Okay, when when I'm faced with a fee I don't like, I can negotiate it. Or, for example, the one that we talked about before, debt is bad. That will limit your choices as you grow up, but a looser message around be careful with debt. That's different. That can make you cautious and not to overspend. That can raise alarm bells if you start to build some debt and help you question, is this an unhealthy habit, or is this, intentional debt that I'm using to grow my wealth? So that's definitely one.
We
And
find that comes up quite a lot, Vicky. People, when they were younger or when they had less money, they thought like that, and they've retained it, and they've grown wealthier. And when you can afford the repayments, it's not such an issue, and it helps smooth out taxation and things like that. And it might make you better off, but they still have this fear of it, of kind of taking it, and they can't do it.
Yeah, it's they operate maybe with an old system, one that doesn't apply to their financial realities in the present. And sometimes it takes a lot of conscious effort to make that shift. Now I can afford debt and actually kind of help me grow my wealth. But it might feel uncomfortable because it's an unfamiliar way of thinking, and people tend to gravitate to what's familiar for them. And I would say the last point around identifying what's an unhelpful money belief. Generally speaking, helpful ones help you feel less anxious about money, whereas unhelpful ones need constant emotional energy. They need constant reassurance that, I'm doing okay, I'm not making a mistake. So that's, I would say, my third tip.
Okay. Another thing we see quite often is people, they're wealthy, and we can tell them, look, you're never going to run out of money. You could spend this amount each month or year and it would never be a problem, or you can give away some money, but they just struggle with overspending. I say overspending because it's not overspending their budget, what they are able to spend. It's just what they're used to. So even when they're financially secure, they can't bring themselves to spend anymore. So why is it you think some people feel unsafe using money that we can see they have, but perhaps they can't?
So they have it, but they can't bring themselves to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't generalize. There isn't one reason. So I would, if you're that person, I would really try and investigate what's behind this. What's the fear? Sometimes it's because what you do in life is hoard money anxiously, because money gives you a sense of safety. And that's where you find kind of this, you're most at peace when you're holding on to it rather than giving it away. For some people, it's a fear of running out of it, maybe because there was a bankruptcy in their family growing up, and maybe because of their own financial history, they know what it's like to run out of money, and they're afraid of going back to that place. For other people, it's about a fear of losing control. Maybe they've been out of control in the past and accumulated debt, and it was a difficult time, and they don't want to go back there.
Okay.
Other people feel guilty when they spend, both because of what we're talking about, kind of that sense of deservedness is lacking. They don't feel they deserve the good things that money can buy. But for some people, it's actually about having done better than their family. So it's kind of what I call a wealth shame, a guilt about their wealth. And so they might feel bad going on holidays that their family would have never been able to afford, or that their friends still can't afford. And so there's something quite difficult and shameful about enjoying the wealth they have. And yet for others, it is about using that old way of thinking because they haven't done the conscious work of adapting to the new financial reality. So they're just operating on on default mode. It's saving is better, saving is safer. And they haven't stopped to really think about, well, what was I saving for? Was I saving to have a good life? When am I going to have that? Isn't it now the time to enjoy the wealth? And it just, sometimes when that's the case, when it isn't kind of the deeper, more difficult emotional issues around deservedness and shame, when it's just about making that conscious shift, it doesn't take very much to make that switch. It just takes a little bit of conscious and purposeful planning. I'm going to put money aside that is purely for enjoyment, for upgrading my lifestyle, and that does the trick.
How do you encourage people to do that then, with those tricks?
Well, there's a few things. I think one is around redefining spending as part of the plan, not a threat to the plan. So, spending, it doesn't have to be what goes against your good financial future. It can be part of a good financial future. It can be part of what we call financial well-being. If saving was about protecting the future, then spending is about allowing you to have the future that you were trying to protect, right? So that's the first one. The second one that people find quite helpful is to ring fence an amount of money that you can afford to spend without a threat to your future. And if you ring fence it and you purposefully call it, life enhancing spending, for example, and that's money that you give yourself permission to spend on, I don't know, travel, but well-being, experiences, then there's something about having that boundary around it, knowing that you can afford it, it's not a threat, that people find quite containing, particularly those people who are afraid of losing control. And that's where that fear is. So knowing that it's a set amount feels more doable. And then another one is to start with reversible decisions. So it's one thing, you might tell your clients, come on, you can afford so much more than the life you're living. And it might be difficult for them to hear that and make different choices. But what if instead of starting with a bigger home, they started with reversible choices, maybe one-off expenditures or, something that can be a reverse, for example, gym membership, better gym membership or something like that, or a holiday. That can feel like bite-sized steps to test out a bigger life than they can afford. And maybe the last one would be about looking at where money in your life can be used to reduce friction. So this isn't just about, indulging in things. It can also be about having an easier life, and that can be a better life. Where's my life unnecessarily effortful? How can money help resolve some of that so that I can live better?
So do more of the things you love with your money.
Yeah.
Perhaps set up a frivolity fund.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I love a bit of alliteration. Makes everything better, doesn't it? A frivolity fund, and also pay other people to do stuff that you dislike. Mm-hmm. In my case, that's painting. I hate painting. Painting and massages.
No. I'm getting to know you better.
Yeah. Right, now this is controversial. Well, it can be. Couples. Because although they love each other, and opposites attract, don't they? So quite often they're very different in how they approach money. Some are unified, but it's more different in my experience. And in your book, you describe couples of having two nervous systems and two money histories. What are the most common clashes that you see, and what usually sits underneath them?
So before I get to that, actually, what you just reminded me with your question is, when we were talking about people who can't spend, sometimes it's a result of a relational dynamic. If they have a partner who spends a lot, then maybe they need to take on the role of the responsible one in the couple, and the one carrying all the anxieties, the one that worries about money, the one who's sensible. And that's what's keeping them stuck in that role. So the solution there is to speak with our partner about, well, how can we meet in the middle so that we're not so polarized? But we can talk about that a bit more. Yes, couples do argue a lot about money. It's one of the leading causes of arguments in relationships. And according to some studies, a quarter of couples argue at least once a week about money. And even for
Wow.
And even for the really well-functioning couples, money is one of the leading causes of arguments. So there's definitely a lot in that. And I think that it's inevitable that we'll clash with a partner around money, because money's not just one thing. There's so many aspects to money that we need to agree on in the day-to-day. There's spending, investing, saving, how to manage debt, how to educate children about money. There's so much, what kind of retirement do we want? Money is such a powerful symbol of so many things that inevitably we won't see eye to eye on everything. So one of the first things that people tend to argue about are their differences. So differences around what's frugal, what's excessive, what's too risky, what's not risky enough. That tends to be the major cause. Then there's also around conflicts around whether and how to merge finances as the relationship moves forward and lives get merged in different ways. What do we do with money? Do we keep autonomy, independence, or do we merge both our funds, but also become more involved in each other's financial decisions? Then there's, how do we split expenses, particularly when incomes differ? So I think there's a lot that gets wrapped up in that in terms of control and power. Does money make you the one that has more say in how decisions are made? Because money means, that you have more power in the relationship. And
so that can lead to financial abuse, can't it, really?
Yes, taken to the extreme, absolutely. Economic and financial abuse. So it's important. People tend to look for a certain degree of autonomy, but also an ability to make joint decisions. And that's a difficult balance to strike. And it will look different for each couple, because some people value independence more than others. Some people need more reassurance, more closeness, more merging. So it's it's both individual but very unique to each couple where that balance is struck.
So this is incredibly hard, isn't it? Because we're not used to talking about money in this country. And with your partner, it's even harder, isn't it? Because obviously some people live in fear of bringing this up, live in fear of their partner, let's be fair. And so they don't want to and reluctant to. And because you're not used to having these conversations with anyone, anywhere, let alone with the person you maybe love the most, hopefully. Now, how can we make these conversations more? What practical tools can we have to help bring these up without having a blazing row and storming out? Perhaps that's what I do. I storm out in any argument.
That's not all bad, because one of the things that I don't recommend is talking about things in the heat of the moment. And there is something, maybe storming out is not ideal. Maybe as a couple, having a timeout is better, and agreeing that when the conversation gets too heated, we need to calm down, because we're not going to be constructive in how we talk to each other. And then coming back to that conversation with curiosity and an open mind. A lot of times, couples get stuck for a number of reasons. They get stuck arguing, first of all, because they're trying to win the argument. They're not trying to understand where the other person is coming from. They're just trying to be right. And that really shuts you down, shuts your listening down. You're not really trying to understand the other person. You're just trying to win. I think the other thing to consider is that when you're trying to win a fight, you're not creating a space for understanding. So you're trying to prove why your approach to money is right and why the other person's approach to money is wrong. Now, if you begin to look at the other two dimensions, so what are the downsides to your approach to money? We're talking earlier about, the frugal person not enjoying money. And what is the upside of their approach to money? Then that's when you can create a space in which, rather than say, right, we're incompatible, we can't find a compromise, you begin to see that actually you can be complementary. If you both bring something to the relationship with money that has value, then that can be married together to have a good balanced approach to money in the relationship, in which maybe you're both enjoying money, maybe you're both taking a bit of risk, which can grow wealth, but also looking after the security of your long-term finances. I think that's really important. I would say normalize talking about money. Don't wait for the conflict to happen to have the conversation. Be curious even from the first date about, I saw you offered to help. Why is that? Why do you? And the answer might differ. Don't make assumptions about why somebody does what they do about money. Be interested in why they do what they do with money.
On the first date, Vicky?
Even then, why not? I'm not saying to ask them to reveal their credit score, but just, be curious. They might choose a bottle of wine that you find insanely expensive. Don't judge it. Ask them, wow, why did you choose that wine? Maybe wine is their one passion, the one thing they value spending money for. Is there something wrong with that? Does it mean that...
That's before you've decided whether to go Dutch or who's paying, isn't it?
That's right.
So that would be a good time to confirm that point, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
I'm thinking about some scenarios now. Now, Vicky, so sometimes we see people, and although opposites attract, often so does commonality. And say if we're talking about frugality, that might be one person's approach, and if they both are, it's kind of an echo chamber of their household conversations would be about that, where they're almost trying to beat each other into who can save the most or get most coupons or loyalty points or whatever it is for anything they buy or don't buy. Which I found that it's super interesting, and I don't want people to feel to have their money as a target to spend it. It shouldn't be a burden, but rather not think about money when they're making a decision. Okay, so in one of the chapters of the book, you talk about understanding your values and changing them. And how you can perhaps shift your values over time through awareness. So how does someone identify their true values rather than thinking, the inherited ones like we spoke about earlier, rather than thinking that's the way they should behave?
A number of ways. First of all, I think it's worth looking at who your role models are when it comes to money. Who do you see having a relationship with money that you wish you had, and what about that relationship do you like? Another one is to just turn in yourself and see beyond money. What are the things that you value? Broaden it up. Is it freedom in general, not just financial freedom? Is it connection with people? And then you think about how you can use money to align your values with your spending. But to be able to kind of differentiate what you've just inherited versus what really belongs to you. I think you have to, first of all, be conscious of what you inherited. So, how was money talked about in the family? What lessons were you taught? What did you observe in your parents? Were they always arguing about money, leaving you with a sense that money is something stressful and that creates conflict? Were you watching them get really anxious when bills arrived? So try to reflect on what you might have picked up from them. And then think about how the kind of those inherited values show up in you. Do they show up as a sense of obligation without meaning? So, when you feel like you're doing something, not because you really want to, but because you feel that that's what's right, I think that can point us to an inherited money belief, something that doesn't quite sit comfortably with us. It doesn't come from a want, but it comes more from a should. So I would challenge some of the shoulds that sit kind of as subtitles in our thinking. And sometimes it is, we are able to tell when something is externally imposed rather than when it really comes within us. And maybe one useful question is, when have I spent money or time in a way that felt quietly right, even if no one noticed? Those could point you to moments in which you were more aligned with your true values rather than doing something because other people, even an audience in your mind, would look at it and be like, yeah, you're doing the right thing.
Okay. So once someone understands their values, how can they align their day-to-day behaviour with money with those values? Any tips on that?
Yeah, so I think we need to be conscious of the money choices we're making. So ask yourself questions around, okay, I know what my values are. Am I now spending in a way that aligns to them? So, for example, if I value financial security, is this purchase now that I'm about to make upgrading my lifestyle, or is it actually moving me one step towards financial security? Or if I value connection, am I spending on, I don't know, status enhancing items, or am I spending on shared experiences that will give me that sense of connection? So I think it's about asking yourself, is my money going in a way that reflects my values? You can do an audit, so it's not just about future decisions. You can look at decisions you're making now already, the things that you've committed money to. Are those aligned to my values? You can even automate choices that reflect the things that you value. So, for example, if it is generosity that you value, you can have a standing order going to your charity, or to support your, nephew's education, whatever it is that you've decided you want to do. If it's learning that you value, can you set money aside every month that automatically gets transferred to an education fund so that you can spend that in the future? So I would say, in general, the best thing to do is replace any kind of narrative around, oh, can I afford this, into, does this move me more towards the life I want, living by the values that I have.
So in my own experience, I always thought that I was a bit tight in that I didn't like buying things, but I would spend money on experiences and stuff and not think about it at all. But over time, I've found that it's nothing to do with the money. I just always equated it to that. I don't like throwing stuff away, and if I buy something, I think I'm going to have to get rid of that at some point, whether it's a tip run or putting it in the bin or whatever. Fortunately, my wife has solved that for me. She likes selling my stuff, so I only own a handful of things now.
So you value not wasting things, and that's maybe not something to be judged, but it's just a different choice that you're making than other people.
Okay. So I'm just going to go. We're going to go to our review section now, Vicky.
Steve and Jess would be really grateful if you'd leave them a review on wherever you listen to your podcasts. If they run a star system, please give Juggling Mind and Money more stars than the Milky Way.
Okay, so we've got a review this week from episode 30 with Sam Hart, which was about inheritance tax. And it's from Bill. I think Bill's our number one super fan, Vicky. But he said, inheritance tax explained without doom, jargon, or a stiff drink. I didn't expect to enjoy a video about inheritance tax. Yet here we are, proof it can be explained without spreadsheets or despair. Sam and Steve made it happen. Who knew inheritance tax could be this much fun?
Oh, fantastic.
That's nice. Bill probably had a stiff drink at that point and probably wasn't listening correctly.
I doubt that, but it's true. I mean, financial conversations can feel so daunting for people. There's a lot of people that I speak to who carry a sense of shame about how little they know. They don't ask the questions, and so having, credible, reliable financial advice or financial information really that is solid and explained without the jargon easily, I think is massively valuable for people.
So Vicky, a few financial advisors listen to this podcast. So I think it might be good to perhaps address them directly. So how can we as financial advisors or planners, how can we recognise when emotional issues are holding their clients back?
Well, I think there's a few clues. I think you might see clients who, despite your good advice, are unable to follow it, and you see them ending up in the same cycles of maybe debt or underspending. They just can't make the changes that they might nod are great ideas in the meeting, and then they can go and implement them. Something is keeping them stuck. Patterns are quite useful thing to notice. Somebody who keeps falling into the same pattern of debt, for example, might need more help than just being told not to do it, and that it's not good financial behavior. People who you can tell have been left quite traumatized by a past experience. They seem to go back to the same worry, the same fear, almost obsessionally, and you see they can't move on from that. I think those are the biggest clues, I would say.
Okay, so I found when making people aware of what might be holding them back, as we've spoken about already, often that is enough, and then people notice it within themselves, and that helps ameliorate what they're doing. However, at what point would you recommend that financial planners say, right, this is above our pay grade now, we need to refer to a financial psychotherapist like yourself, or a money coach, or someone like that?
I would say sometimes your own feeling is a good clue. So when you're feeling out of depth, that's a good point to refer on. Sometimes I've heard advisors say to me, it almost feels like they're there for emotional support more than for financial advice. And maybe that's a clue that they need a different kind of help.
I think that's 95% of our job anyway. Definitely.
And I think it's one thing when you're kind of reassuring them that, volatility doesn't mean they're going to lose all their money. I think there are a lot of psychological benefits to financial advice that people get, and you are there to offer that. But sometimes, if you feel that the session is mostly being used for that rather than, more guidance, really, then I would say it might be a good time to refer. I would say if you're seeing couples that continue to argue about money, they have the same arguments and can't move past them, or you suspect that the financial stress and anxiety has started to impact their lives. You're seeing a client becoming increasingly depressed, really struggling to cope with whatever's coming up through their finances, or even, big life events. Sometimes that's what drives somebody to seek financial advice, bereavement, a divorce, and they might need financial advice, but they might need more than that. And that's when you can let them know that there is a different kind of help on offer as well, if they want it.
Fantastic, Vicky. So I've really enjoyed today's conversation. It's been super great. If any of this has resonated with anybody listening or watching on YouTube, then do get in touch or read Vicky's column in the Sunday Times and purchase her book, Money on Your Mind, which is available at all good booksellers, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Vicky?
That's right, yes.
And look, if you're noticing anything about yourself that you think might be holding you back, look into it, do some reading. And I think you might find Vicky's book will maybe, as it did with me, raise a few points and make you think, hang on a minute, that's me.
Thank you.
Or not, because obviously I'm financially perfect. I'm a financial planner.
Of course.
We aren't, by the way. Anyway, thanks ever so much, Vicky. It's been super great having you. All listeners, please leave us a review if you can on YouTube or iTunes. That'd be fantastic. Okay, until next time, see you later.